welcome everyone. Thanks for joining Cloud-Powered Space Missions. I'm going to start off by doing an acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, My Security Media acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. So as you can see, we're in our 4th week now of the City November Festival. We've had over 60 different speakers and over 18 sessions. So here is some of the pictures of some of the different speakers we've had joining us. I want to also do a huge thank you to our sponsors. We have our platinum sponsor Inmarsat, our gold sponsor Fugro Spark, our Women in Space sponsor Lockheed Martin, and our official media channel Space and Defence. So today I am joined by Mani Faru. So Mani, if you want to turn on your camera and microphone. Now Mani's joining us all the way from Florence, which is pretty exciting, so hence the later session tonight, and she's the space industry development, or works in space industry development at Amazon Web Services. So welcome Mani. I'm going to hand over to you and I'm going to share your slides for you and you're going to just say next when you're ready. So Mani, without further ado, thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Thanks so much for the very warm welcome, Jess. And your respectful acknowledgement of country. Hello, everyone. I am delighted to speak to you today from Florence, Italy. I was here in Bremen initially for the Space Tech Conference in Germany, and I've just hopped over to have a little break in Florence. And while I'm on break, Jess invited me to do this session, and I'm super happy to share a little bit of time with you on explaining what we do with cloud in terms of accelerating space missions. So let's get started. Just if you wouldn't mind going to the second slide. I just want to give you a quick rundown of what we're going to talk about today. I'll baseline for you by beginning with what or who Amazon Web Services is, for those of you that aren't maybe aware of what AWS is all about, and then specifically move on to my team, that is the team that looks after the space industry. So that's customers who are primarily running space missions and or have a satellite business. And then we'll talk a little bit about how cloud is powering the space industry. I'll give you some specific examples of how customers across the globe are using cloud to accelerate their missions. I'll say a little bit about why we're a little different from perhaps some of the other providers, you know, in terms of stitching together end-to-end solutions. And then if we have time, we'll try and do a little bit of a Q&A. So let's get started. Next slide, please, Jess. So for those of you who may not be as familiar with AWS, Amazon Web Services has been operating since 2006. And essentially we offer what's known as cloud computing. So that is IT infrastructure services to businesses in the form of web services. It's now commonly known as cloud computing, but essentially the key benefit of cloud computing is the opportunity to replace upfront capital infrastructure expenses with a low variable cost. So it's a pay-as-you-go model, which will scale with your business. So with the cloud, you no longer need to plan for and procure servers and other heavy-duty IT infrastructure weeks or months in advance. Instead, you can instantly spin up hundreds or thousands of servers as you need to basically stand up businesses, deliver results faster to your own customers. Next slide, please, Jess. So I hope that gives you a little bit of sense for what cloud is, and then that will sort of inform the conversation that we're about to have. Now, to the convergence of cloud and space. The world is entering a daring new phase. We are seeing, not just in Australia, but across the globe, the investment that is going into the space economy is running to the trillions. More and more missions are being launched. We can see trends like miniaturization. So there's more sophisticated compute power on smaller devices. There's a new era of a space age dawning, and we have a role to play in supporting the customers who are launching some of these missions. Next slide, please, Jess. So what is it? What is it actually that we have in terms of cloud? We have significant experience supporting both commercial and government customers in the aerospace and satellite industry. NASA JPL was one of our very first public sector customers. And in late 2020, we created a team. AWS created an industry business unit that is dedicated to aerospace and satellite solutions customers, because we saw and continue to see incredible potential for cloud computing to support the growing space industry. We're excited to help companies reimagine how to build, access, and operate space systems on the cloud and use innovation to be successful. Next slide, please, Jess. So we have a global team of experts, and it's something crazy where, you know, between all of us, we have something like 500 or 600 years of combined industry experience, and it's experience that stretches across the space value chain, from satellite design and launch through to on-orbit operations, human flight experience, and everything in between. So we have this deep knowledge coupled with best practices and an unmatched portfolio of cloud services, which makes us sort of highly qualified to provide our customers with a comprehensive set of mission solutions. And this, you know, what you're seeing on the screen is a few different ways that cloud is enabling space industry access. So the solutions that we have, or the AWS services that we have, provides secure, flexible, scalable, and cost-efficient solutions that support customers, governments, companies advancing space missions around the world. Next slide, please, Jess. So today, customers are around the world using AWS solutions, services, and product offerings such as data lakes, storage, high-performance computing, machine learning, edge computing, really anything resilient, robust, that requires satellite connectivity, image processing, intelligence analytics. These are all being used in very meaningful ways to drive innovation in space-based missions. You may know something about GrantStation as a service. It's primarily what a lot of customers tend to talk about when we reference AWS and cloud in space. So I'll go on to that in a little bit, but I kind of want you to understand that we're basically, the team that we have today has the best of cloud experience as well as space experience. So we're sitting right in that intersection of unique offerings in terms of capability, competence, and the solutions that we have. Next slide, please, Jess. So let's talk a little bit about GrantStation. I know that even before we started the session, a lot of you reached out to me and said you're excited about learning more about the GrantStation. What I'm sharing with you is super high level. There's plenty of information on our website, but I want to say that if you have any questions, and you probably will have a few, please don't hesitate to reach out to me after this session as well. And Jess will happily provide details for how you can do that. Let's talk a little bit about GrantStation as a service. So first thing, it is as a service. It's pay by the minute for antenna access to control satellite communications and process data. So AWS GrantStation is a fully managed service that lets you control satellite communications, process data, scale your operations without having to worry about building or managing your own GrantStation infrastructure, which costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time, lots of regulatory permissions, licensing, etc. that has to take place before these investments are in place. And satellites, as you know, are used for a wide variety of use cases, from weather forecasting to surface imaging, communications, video broadcast. So the applications are varied, and GrantStations form the core of satellite networks. So with AWS GrantStation, you have direct access to AWS services and the AWS global infrastructure. That includes that back-end, low latency global fiber network. So for example, you can use Amazon S3, so it's storage, to basically download data, so connect to the satellite, downlink that information straight into our S3 bucket. And then you can use services like Amazon Kinesis data streams for managing data ingestion from satellites. And then further downstream, as you continue to process the data to derive insights, you can use things like Amazon SageMaker and machine learning, or you can build custom machine learning applications that apply to your own data sets. And what we've discovered over the last 18 months, we've seen customers save up to 80% of the costs of the ground station operations by paying only for the actual antenna time used and relying on the global footprint. We have about 9 ground stations across the globe, and there's no additional cost for transferring that data across regions. So you only pay for the actual antenna time used, and you download the data when and where you need it. So there are no long-term commitments, and you have the ability to rapidly scale your satellite communications on demand when your business needs it. Let me give you a few different examples of how customers are using this. Next slide, please, Jess. So, for instance, Capella Space, they are a provider of they're satellite SAR operators. So they provide SAR data, on-demand Earth observation data via synthetic aperture radar, and they run their entire IT infrastructure on AWS. And they've done that to both automate and scale their operations. So in this context, AWS Ground Station makes it simple and cost-effective for Capella to command and control their constellation of satellites, receive the satellite data directly onto AWS cloud, and then they use that fully managed network of antenna systems located around the world to process and then send on that insights into their customers, so their end customers. Now, as many of you, those familiar with the satellite industry and the types of differing sensors we have, Capella SAR satellites can see through clouds and darkness, and they collect millimeter scale resolution. So it's super, you can just see by the image, you can see very clearly through all sorts of weather conditions, 24/7. So that kind of, being the ability to deliver a persistent monitoring capability for customers, working in fields where things change quickly, it could be defense, it could be humanitarian assistance in a disaster recovery setting. In scenarios like this, near immediate access to satellite data is critical. And yet, most traditional ground stations can take up to 24 hours to process, to complete tasking, schedule the satellite passes, establish uplinks, download and process the data and deliver the imagery. So this is one example of how cloud has the ability to lend its innovation to speed, scale, cost, and the instantaneous nature of delivering insights to a customer that needs intel very quickly. Next slide, please. Let's look at another example. Oh no, before we look at an example, this slide is basically to help understand that AWS cloud is largely a bunch of services. And what we do is we typically stitch together services that make sense to you. So we don't have any custom solutions. We don't have anything that is ready-made and packaged for you, the customer specifically. We build based on what you need, and we build to your customers' specs. So we truly work backwards from the customer, and we'll work with you to look at the value chain of what you need to do. And now this is a downstream example of a customer connecting to a satellite, downloading that information and running processes to derive insights from it. But it could just well be upstream. So it could be around the build of a CubeSat. It could be say creating a digital twin in prep for something that you want simulated. It could be a larger spacecraft. It could be any number of scenarios. But basically, we have over 200 different services, and it's our task to sit together with you and work out which of those services, what combinations makes the most sense for you in order to build a solution that's complementing or accelerating your end mission. Next slide, please, Jess. Oh yes, and this is specifically around ground stations. We have 9 ground stations across the globe at the moment. And like I said before, this enables you to downlink information wherever you want to, so wherever the satellite passes are making the connections. And you can transfer these between regions at no extra cost. So it really is tailored to where your constellation is and what your business drivers are. All right, next slide, please, Jess. This is another example. This is another example of an AWS customer who's able to demonstrate the growing importance of downstream data processing, and this time at continental scale. So we've worked with customers and partners like Geoscience Australia, CSIRO, Digital Earth Africa, as well as Digital Earth Australia uses AWS to make continental high-scale resolution satellite data available within minutes of capture. This is like 500, 600, 700% faster than before. And it allows prompt government, environmental policy changes. The kind of work that we're looking at, particularly in terms of moving forward national missions for Australia. CSIRO's got AquaWatch, and there's a lot emerging around climate change. This is the kind of use case that cloud, in combination with the rest of the space ecosystem, comes in really handy. I only recently learned that about 50% of ECVs, that's the climate variables, environmental climate variables, can only be measured from space. So from a space perspective, from a cloud perspective, we have a lot to do as far as impacting climate change is concerned, using the tools and applications that we now have available to us. Remembering that, a decade ago, or even a few years ago, most of this kind of technology was only really available to the military and defense. And if they did exist or were available institutionally in large institutions, it wasn't as democratized as it is today, because now we have a whole bunch of startups who look at the large data sets that are sitting here and are starting to fuse data with their own different business models. So companies like Alula, like Spiral Blue in Australia, they are building on top of infrastructure assets, or in fact pivoting completely separately and finding different data sets that they can derive intel from and then apply them as effectively as they can to very different use cases, ranging from agriculture and energy monitoring to sometimes even disease, COVID disease mapping controls. So there's lots of interesting use cases that can come out of one use case, such as looking at continental scale satellite imaging and producing data from that. So how do we actually do all this? And I've kept this high level, but I want to go into a little bit of detail. So next slide, please, Jess. So I just want to do a little bit that's devoted to looking at machine learning. Machine learning is key to much of the data processing work required. So to convert those maps and bits into meaningful intelligence, which can then be used by various sectors, it's all machine learning. And within AWS, we have a SageMaker, which is, again, key to analyzing satellite data with machine learning. Without going into too much detail, what I want to say is that we want to put machine learning in the hands of every developer. So we have a machine learning solutions lab, and basically we will pair your team with our machine learning experts to help you identify and build solutions that address your organization's machine learning opportunities. So whether that's enabling organizations to move faster to react to disasters like wildfires, or deliver vaccines, or crop monitoring, looking at agricultural fields, we can do that. In fact, we are doing that. So let me give you a few examples of how the combination of machine learning services, ground station, storage, high performance computing all come together to help this next customer deploy a service really well. Next slide, please, Jess. So this is Fireball International. Fireball International is one of our Australian customers. I'm, I was really excited when we started working together with them. They've built a capability where today, within 3 minutes of detecting wildfires, literally they take 3 minutes to detect wildfires using AWS Cloud. They are able to process over 2.5 million images. That's almost 30 gigabytes of satellite a day, and process all that information really rapidly to inform authorities of potential wildfires. And this is it's built on cloud, so we were able to design a solution, get it working. And sadly, like earlier this year, we had also fires in Greece, in Turkey, California. There's again growing changes in the climate ecosystem means that we're going to experience a lot more extreme weather. And because Fireball is built on cloud, we are able to port solutions into these other countries. So literally, we see our task as not just helping build the solution on cloud, but the ability to scale globally immediately to deliver a solution for another customer. That's also something that we're really keen on partnering with. So we have AWS has customers across the globe. We have an incredible policy team who are connected at every phase at different branches of the government across the globe. So it's not just about building solutions, it's also how we then take you and connect you to potential customers across other parts of the globe who may be able to avail themselves of the capability that you've built for Australia. Could start in Australia, but ideally we're exporting, and this is part of the whole space economy growth projections that the Australian Space Agency has. We want to create more jobs, we want to create more services and products in the space business that are also going to be exportable products and services. So we're really excited about helping you do both technology development as well as the business reach and expansion. Okay, so that's enough on Fireball. Is there any other examples? I think I have maybe one more example, Jess. Could I go to the next slide? Yes, Satsure. So Satsure is a company based out of India, and this startup's cloud-based data platform provides end-to-end managed analytical services for the government to monitor and track their resources and planning programs in areas as varied as agriculture, forestry, smart cities. And basically what AWS does is help accelerate analysis. Again, reducing that turnaround time as much as 10 times than what is possible using normal workstations. So one of the things that's interesting with Satsure is that as satellite imagery is the primary input for Satsure solutions. Now they also use AWS's open registry of open data. So we have, you should check it out if you get a chance. Registry of Open Data is basically public data sets that we've made available from many different organizations, from NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association out of the US. We have beautiful data sets from Landsat 1, Sentinel-2. There's a variety of good information there, good data sets there, which we put out with the intention that people will go out, and particularly startups or research communities. It's designed to foster more innovations from existing data sets. But we also host, if you have good data sets that you think may benefit from global innovation or sharing data sets to create even more hypothesis-led driven research, then that's the place to go. So Satsure also utilizes the open data sets that we've made available on AWS to reduce their transaction cost and their time to source data sets for analysis in their storage. Our data sets, they're global, so there's reach in any part of the world. And again, the kind of services that they use is basically taking that data, creating a streaming data ingestion and an analytics stack, again, using Amazon Kinesis, they've built a data pipe that's instrumental in doing field data collection for retraining AI, the machine learning algorithms. So space for me personally, it's as much about looking at the stars as it is about dealing with data. Ultimately, it's all about data. I guess the takeaway message for this particular slide is that this is again an example of a customer that's using a variety of different AWS services. Again, they've been stitched together to come up with one solution. I think I was talking about utilizing AWS's open data sets, registry of open data on AWS, which is a resource or a tool that a lot of folks who may be interested in downloading data for free and then using it to train their ML models. So that was one of the points. And the second one was just explaining a little bit more about how Satshore specifically has used, they've created a streaming data ingestion and an analytics stack using Amazon's Kinesis data pipe, which may sound like a lot of technical gobbledygook to a lot of people. But again, I just want to say there's this variety of services that we've pulled together to build this particular solution for Satshore. And they're in the business of, again, providing intelligence to the Indian government, to Indian businesses around agriculture, around crop productivity, around environmental degradation or preservation, whichever the focus is. And it's creating intelligence out of the Earth observation data that they're collecting. That's the takeaway message here. It's how do we do that, and how does cloud do that for you? So I think I've said enough about machine learning services, ground station, storage, analytics, and there's so many different services, but the principal message is most of these services are innovative enough to reduce the time to market or the creation of intelligence and the cost that you're doing it for. So it's innovation, cost, and then the additional advantages that come with cloud: secure, super secure, government agencies. We have defense organizations that use our stack. So security, it's built in, security is #1 priority for us. So it's secure, it's scalable, and it's elastic. So again, it expands as your business expands. So you only, again, pay for what you use, which is just such a, particularly for startups, it's just a wonderful model, because in the event that you are going along a certain direction and you decide, okay, it's not quite for me, I'm going to scratch this, you can just, throw out what you've built and literally go back to the drawing board and start again. Just brilliant. Okay, so I think I've rambled on enough in terms of the services and how they're being utilized by different companies. And that was just to get you thinking about, if you were building a product or a space product or a service or a solution, what would that look like? How would I be able to help you? And that was pretty much what the last 20 minutes has been about. So next slide, please, Jess. I think I've done my examples. Yes, and basically the message here is we have services that are enabling. We enable you. You're the next generation of space builders. So you create the products and services and solutions, and we'll be right there alongside you to help you build what that technology stack looks like. We've been doing it for a while now. We've been doing it in agriculture, national security, smart cities and urban planning. We've been doing it for energy companies, climate studies. So there's a range of different sectors that we have domain expertise in. Technology is the primary driver. And then, of course, it's all under the umbrella of space, aerospace, and satellite solutions. So let me stop there and maybe pass back to you, Jess. I just want to say we're committed to advancing missions in space, regardless of the size of customer or company you may be, and regardless of the actual mission. We're all about just helping you get there. So we've got a few different ways that we can engage with you. And that's the next slide, Jess, please. Thank you. I saw it come up. We think we're a little bit different because we're committed to the industry. We are obsessed with what you're doing. So we always start from your mission and work backwards. Again, like I said, we don't have any custom built solutions that we can give you. We will build for you. Our cloud portfolio positions us really well. Again, we've got a large amount of experience as AWS in other sectors, that the knowledge and expertise that we can bring to bear, but specifically in space, as I mentioned, we've got a team who've come out of this industry. So we've got the combination of cloud space expertise, which we think will help you accelerate your missions. So with that said, I think I saw some questions. I'll hand it back to you, Jess, for some Q&A. I think you had some curated, and then if there's any other questions which I may have missed because I wasn't watching the screens.
I think one of them came in the chat here. If you can see that, can you see that as well, Manny? Just
no.
From, oh, you can. Okay. Sorry, it's really. Manny, I work in consulting and many of our government clients are interested in solutions. Where can they utilize surface imagery of areas of interest to improve their decision-making for various operations, emergency services response, monitoring, etc.? I'm interested in how ground station could be used if we don't have our own satellites to connect, like Capella Space.
So we do need access to a satellite because ours is the ground station, and you need to connect to a satellite in order to pull down that information. We don't own satellites, but there are organizations who can help us. So we've got a wide range of partners. I'm happy to, whoever that is, to put you in touch with our different partners, and developing response-based solutions. So using surface imagery, whether it's from satellites or from drones, the use cases are so varied. Really, it's the limits of our imagination with what we can do with information that we now have at our fingertips. So I think I've mentioned about agriculture. We've got sensors on satellites today that can tell a farmer from his desktop or his iPad what the crop yield is going to be like, what specifically the nutrition on his field, whether it's missing nitrogen, or maybe it needs more potassium, or this patch is exhausted. We might need to shift our cattle to another part of the field. So the amount of information that we have is huge. How we utilize that, that's a perfect consulting piece of work, because it's all about doing things differently, right? Again, for me, what's the biggest learning that I've had moving into commercial space, this kind of tools, access to information, was only ever really made available to the military, right? Like they had their own satellites, they could look at people movement, they could look at weapons movements, etc., etc. But now we're deploying it for civil society. So floods, fires, looking at climate change, how the oceans are slowly engulfing us, looking at air pollution, looking at water pollution, looking at energy leaks, looking at methane emissions. There are, the use cases are just, it's what we want to invest our time and money in. From a consulting perspective, this is brilliant, because a lot of businesses today, and we've had very sort of anodyne examples over the past few years. You can count the number of cars in a car park using satellite imagery, and then you can sort of almost build a business model for predicting profits that year for that particular supermarket or the shopping center, that complex. We can do so much more than that. So it's ours to pursue. And on that particular subject about access to satellites, let me come back to them specifically on who we can help them partner with.
And the satellite operators, do they sell their data direct on AWS, or how does that sort of piece work?
Yeah, so it's a long value chain, and we play a role because we enable different people at different stages of the value chain. So you can have a satellite operator who are fully integrated. If you look at like a Maxar or a Planet, They are end-to-end. They have their own satellites. They, in many cases, have their own ground stations. I mean, ground station as a service for us is new, but it's not new to the industry. So they've been collecting information from satellites, processing it and delivering it into a variety of different sectors. And then you have now that value chain is being disintermediated because a lot of new startups are coming into the equation, and they want to be very specific, really good at one thing that they want to solve. So it could be like a Capella, you know, their focus is on SAR. It could be like a Fireball, which, you know, it started out very specific. We will detect fires, wildfires, that's their thing. We've got others. I have a company called EOFactory in Singapore who does agriculture. So they provide information to insurance companies in India, and a farmer will say, I did not have, you know, they're insured for their agricultural business, but they'll say, I had a really bad season this year. The floods devastated my crop yields. I'd like to claim on my insurance. And EOFactory, what they do is actually they run the satellite pass over that particular area, and they validate that this in fact did happen. And then they send that information back to the insurance company. So the insurance company don't have to send out people to, you know, inspect the farming area, which could be in the middle of nowhere. But literally satellite data is, you know, it's doing business completely differently. So there's so many different examples like that. I hope that sort of answers the question a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, look, obviously Amazon are known for doing so much, and Amazon Web Services. I'm always saying, is there anything Amazon can't do? But I'd love to know what's the motivation behind, I suppose, the interest in getting involved in space.
Yeah, so it was super interesting for me specifically because when I started, there wasn't a dedicated business vertical within AWS. I looked after the space industry as part of my overall remit as working within public sector in Australia. And then, like I said, July 2020 last year, the leadership team at Amazon decided to form a dedicated industry business vertical. That's because we recognize the world is entering a really exciting new space age. And innovation is the backbone of our culture, innovation and customer obsession. So we wanted to make this future a reality. And we're just excited about focusing on solving these unique challenges for the space industry. But, you know, and the challenges are primarily, one is to reduce the cost of innovation, so more people can innovate, and we have faster innovation cycles. And you know, space exploration typically requires extensive upfront capital expenditures, like physical ground station environment, building up one of those, setting up integral control and guidance systems for spacecraft. Those are complex programs, and using cloud, we actually help our customers. We provide them with the tools to rapidly experiment, to do their digital design, engineering, digital modeling, simulation. So the ability to leverage this type of innovative and collaborative approach, we feel, is key for tomorrow's leaders, and we want to be a part of that. And then the second thing is, of course, securely managing and transforming data. So the space industry was originally born out of really the defense military establishment. So they've always been super, super high on making sure it's top secret data, that the data is secure. And so we want to bring that same level of security to our commercial customers, because it is important. Persistent global satellite data collection has led to a dramatic increase in the amount of raw data that must be properly managed. So, you know, there's hundreds of terabytes every day that satellite companies are collecting, and to reliably downlink that information, to store it, and to responsibly access it, and, you know, process it for intelligence. That's something that we want to, again, help customers do well with, because the last thing you want is, you know, leaks here and lost data there. And this is all precious information, right? It might be agricultural crop yields, but that has significant economic impact to a nation. So it doesn't matter what it is. It's really, for us, we're orienting around security, innovation, cost, scale. Those are the kind of things that we're excited about normally from a cloud perspective, and then to do that specifically for cloud, that's a thing.
That's great. Well, I'm conscious that you've got to head off in just a moment, but I have got one final question that kind of ties in quite nicely. First of all, massive thank you. It was really great to learn more about how the cloud is making a positive impact on the sort of space ecosystem. And you mentioned there's so many different use cases, which I think is so interesting around space and how it can impact so many different areas of life. Is there a particular use case or area that you feel is the most exciting, or that you're particularly interested in at the moment, that you want to share with anyone?
So I'm pretty passionate about the geospatial workloads in general, particularly, like I said, around climate. And we have a lot to do as Australia from I guess, from a global perspective. We have a role to play, and we've got so many precious landforms, water, there's so much, and, using space technology to help us adapt to mitigate to what's coming. For me, that's a personal thing. But in general, I am really passionate about, passionate also because, it totally makes sense. We have this data, we can make a difference. So it's about processing the information and getting it to these frontline farmers, engineers, oil and gas companies, really to save on, I guess, to stop us being profligate with our environment and taking it for granted, and making sure that we're using intelligence to safeguard our planetary assets and boundaries. This is, for me, the whole space exploration is really also to bring back benefits back to Earth. And I think anything that we can do to continue to use technology for good, that's where my heart's at. And I think, it's not uncommon to have a lot of our geospatial experts and people who play in the downstream space work. They're pretty passionate around the same things.
That's awesome. And just for people listening, if they want to find out more, if they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that after the session?
Oh, I'm more than happy to leave you with my email address. So I'll leave you my email address. LinkedIn is another way. Sure. But anytime anyone has a question, please feel free to reach out and ask. We're more than happy to, even if it's just an inquiry and you don't use us at all for anything, very happy to just understand what you're doing and see if we can help you in some way, shape or form.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Manny. We really appreciate it. I was about to share my slides, but they seem to have gone. So instead, I'm just going to end like this. So yeah, huge thank you to everyone for attending today. Massive thank you. The session will get recorded, which is fantastic. So it will be made available on the Acity website. And coming up next, we've got a session tomorrow at 12 p.m. Australian, Sydney time, sorry. And that's going to be with Mark O'Hare talking about mental health and humans in space. We're very excited to that. So Manny, huge thanks to you again. And thanks to everyone for joining us, and good night. Enjoy your evening or morning for you. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye guys. The Spock way.